All right, ladies and gentlemen, we would now like to invite our guest of honor, Minister Lawrence Wong, to say a few words. Minister Wong, if you will.
Mr. SIA, President of the Singapore Institute of Architects, past presidents of the SIA, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to join you this evening for the Singapore Institute of Architects 58th Annual Dinner. And I'm certainly honored to be in this distinguished company of architects who have done so much to help build and shape today's Singapore. I last attended an SIA event 2 years ago. I think that was for a dialogue. Back then, the economy was doing well, but the construction sector was in recession. In some ways, the situation is somewhat reversed now. We face headwinds in the overall economy. We are not yet in a recession, but the slowdown is clear and perceptible. And as you heard just now, the construction industry is finally seeing some light at the end of the tunnel after 3 consecutive years of contraction. But I know that this is not giving you any joy, because that sense of anxiety on the ground is still very real. Because we all know and understand and appreciate that this slowdown is not just an economic situation. There are darker clouds over the horizon with geopolitical tensions, pressures on globalization that may weigh on our economy for some time. So I want to assure all of you that we are monitoring the situation closely, including the situation that I think many smaller firms are concerned about, the pressure that you face on fees, and we will continue to see what necessary actions may need to be taken. But the situation we are in reflects the realities of Singapore. We are a small, open economy. Many things are not within our control, and we will always be subject to the vagaries of the external environment. So we will have to continue to do our best to manage through these uncertainties as we have always done. This is not the first time that we are facing challenges in the external environment, nor will it be the last. But time and again, each time we have to go through a difficult period, we have been able to steer Singapore through stormy waters and emerge stronger and better. And I'm confident that we can continue to do this when we face stormy waters ahead of us. Where the built environment is concerned, we do have some control over demand factors, especially for public sector projects. And that's what we've been doing in recent years. We brought forward many public sector projects, and that's exactly why we are seeing now this slight uptick in construction activity. And I can assure you that there will be continued demand. There will still be a healthy pipeline of projects led by the public sector in the coming years. We are not just doing more projects for the sake of pump priming. We are looking for fresh ideas to break new ground, to remake our city, and to stay an exceptional nation. And as you are aware, many of you would have seen the URA Draft Master Plan 2019. We have pulled together these ideas and the plans that we are putting in place over the next 10 to 15 years. Our key motivation is to find new ways to stay competitive and relevant to the world. And that's why we are doubling down on our connectivity by expanding the capacity of our airports in Changi, seaport in Tuas, and enhancing our land links in Woodlands. And we are planning new gateways around these hubs to support new industries, to grow the economy, and create more jobs. So if you have seen the master plan, I'll just briefly describe the broad parameters. In the west, in addition to the Tuas terminal, we have the Jurong Lake District. That's one gateway in the west. Of course, one project there is a high-speed rail that's been put on hold at Malaysia's request. Don't ask me whether the project is going on or not. I have no answer now. We will know by May 2020, that's the deadline. And so the Malaysians are supposed to come back to us by then. But whatever the Malaysian decision, whatever the outcome of the HSR, we are continuing with our plans to develop Jurong Lake District as a new commercial and residential precinct and a unique recreational and leisure destination. So several major pieces will be coming together over the next few years. The revamp of Jurong Lake Gardens, the new science center, and a new tourist attraction next to the science center. And beyond that, potentially commercial and residential parcels being put out for sale. In the east, the new Changi Airport Terminal 5 will be a catalyst to transform the whole region. And we are now in the master plan looking at the area around the expanded Changi Airport to see how it can be renewed, rejuvenated, and put to better use. In the north, we are stitching together multiple developments from Woodlands to Sembawang and Seletar, as well as the upcoming Punggol Digital District. So it's an entire northern corridor which can anchor businesses and investments, particularly in new growth industries like agri-tech, food tech, and cybersecurity. So we have 3 new gateways that we are developing in the west, east, and the north. And besides these gateways, we are also refreshing and updating our city center. Many of you would have heard that we announced an incentive scheme for the CBD earlier in March. This is an incentive for developers and building owners to update and refresh their buildings. We've received keen interest from many developers and property owners. I can't tell you what they are. Hopefully, some of these will go beyond just interest and they will be actually translated to projects, and I'm sure they will be. So that will also lead to more private sector projects for the CBD. In the longer term, we have exciting plans for the greater southern waterfront. This is the parcel of land that will be freed up when the container ports all eventually move to Tuas. Some have already moved, but the rest of it will take some time. The potential for development there is huge. You know that the space that's freed up is 1,000 hectares. It's 3 times the size of Marina Bay. So it will keep us busy for more than a decade developing the entire southern waterfront. But we will start first with 2 sites in the shorter term. First, the Keppel Club site. When the site is returned to the state very soon, that site will be slated for residential use. Second, the Pasir Panjang Power District. We've just held an ideas competition for what to do with this power district. It is a beautiful site. We've got old power station buildings which we are keeping for the time being, and we are looking at ways where we can repurpose these buildings through adaptive reuse and activate the open spaces around the district. So we've received many good ideas from the competition. We intend to hold an exhibition soon to showcase these ideas, and then we will announce at that stage how we intend to take this forward. So these 2 sites, in Keppel Golf Club and the Pasir Panjang Power District, will be the first development, if you will, around the entire southern waterfront. But the entire development of this new southern waterfront city will take years, if not more than a decade of work. So overall, we have a solid master plan. But the master plan is only as good as its implementation. And to do that well, we will need the contribution from all of you, our community of architects. And I hope that you will look at each of these projects that are coming up not just as a commercial transaction, but as an opportunity to fundamentally reimagine and remake our city. For example, how can we make our city so wonderful that Singapore can be the most sought-after place in the world to live and work? How can we imagine new ways to connect with each other? How can we live in a compact urban environment that still retains a sense of space and greenery, of culture and heritage, where we can all live more richly and meaningfully together? How can we start thinking about protecting ourselves for the longer term against challenges like climate change and global warming, which are bound to happen? It's a reality. So rising sea levels, rising temperatures, how do we protect ourselves against these threats? To answer these questions, we have to be prepared to go beyond the status quo, to push the frontiers and come up with new innovative ideas. So tonight, let me suggest 3 broad areas where I think we can all do more together. First, more collaboration. And President Mr. SIA Wong touched on this earlier. More collaboration. We didn't tie up our notes and speaking points. So it so happens that SIA also talks about collaboration, and I think that's indeed needed. That's because the nature of projects is changing. Many of you are used to doing residential projects. And maybe there will be more residential projects in the future, particularly in the private sector. I don't know how the private property market will evolve in the future. Please don't ask me. I can't comment on it anyway. But I'm quite sure that the mix of projects in the pipeline will be different. There will be more complex projects, larger in scale, and more mixed use in nature. There will be higher standards for sustainability, construction productivity, and more requirements for integration with public spaces. So doing well in these projects requires deep expertise. It requires close collaboration amongst different disciplines, so firms cannot afford to operate in silos. And I would encourage architectural firms to think about collaborations both amongst yourselves and with other professionals like engineers and others. So I'm very happy to hear just now about the Collaborative Alliance Conference. Yeah, that's happening. I think these are good platforms where all the different professions around the built architecture can come together, exchange best practices, and potentially even form commercial partnerships. On the government's end, to facilitate these, we have changed the rules, following industry feedback to facilitate collaborative bidding. Right? We have smaller firms can now pool together your resources to be eligible to tender for higher value projects. That was something the industry shared with us, and we've taken the feedback and updated the rules. So I hope the new rules work better to facilitate collaboration, and we will certainly be happy to hear from you what other changes in rules and regulations you think will be useful in fostering more professional collaboration. So that's my first point. Second, more engagement with the community. Architecture is sometimes seen as a form of artistic self-expression to produce something of beauty and aesthetic value. But, I must share with you that I'm always a little bit wary about the phrase iconic buildings. Please don't misunderstand. I would love to see more beautifully sculpted forms in our cityscape. They are beautiful. But we are not dealing with sculptures in a gallery. We are dealing with buildings that are an integral part of human living. So the role of the architect is not about creating isolated physical forms. It's about being responsive to environmental and community outcomes and creating places that resonate deeply with human souls, places where people want to live and work in. And this is not to downplay the role of design. On the contrary, design is more important than before. But you've got to look at design in the broader sense. For example, there is biophilic design. where you integrate living and natural elements in the modern built environment, not as an afterthought and you sprinkle some greenery in your building. That's not biophilic design, but you do it upstream and think hard about how nature can be integrated with your building form. And that's crucial in promoting sustainability and enhancing our city in a garden, including protecting our biodiversity. Or you can talk about collaborative design, where users become part of the design process and they help to evolve more people-friendly, human-centered solutions. In other words, architects are not just expressing an individual's creativity, namely the architect's creativity, but you are also supporting the community's creativity. And many of you are already doing this. For example, Chi Huang, in designing the Tampines Hub, I'm told, conducted and engaged in hundreds of workshops with the community in order to put together the entire Tampines Hub. And now in my constituency, in Marsiling UT, when we are doing an upgrading project, we've decided to do it differently. Instead of engaging an architect upfront and then showing residents the design and getting them to vote, we've decided to get another consultant in to do engagement on design. They do pop-ups all over the estate, get ideas, they do deep dives, workshops with residents, and then these inputs go to an architect later to create and co-create the ultimate upgrading works with residents together. It's more involved, it takes more time, we are actually spending more, but we think it's money worth spending in order to bring about a better outcome. So in doing this kind of work, the architect cannot operate in isolation in the studio. There has to be active engagement with building owners, developers, with diverse stakeholder groups and users. And I think that kind of a collaborative design work with active engagement with all stakeholders can and will lead to better outcomes. Thirdly, more investments in R&D. We all recognize that R&D is the best way for companies to gain competitive advantage. Unfortunately, in the built environment, corporate spending on R&D is low compared to other sectors of the economy. And I'm not just talking about architects or consultants. You look at the entire segment of the built environment, be it developers, contractors, or consultants. The amount dedicated to R&D is low compared to other sectors of the economy. The government will do more in this area, and we are investing close to $1 billion in R&D in urban solutions. But we also hope that the private sector will do its part. Now, from time to time, I hear architects tell me that, well, R&D is not so applicable to our industry because the research that you are doing is in the area of hard science, basic science, deep engineering solutions. That's not for us. But in fact, there are many research areas that are relevant to the work of architects. For example, we are interested in research on how buildings and spaces affect human behaviors. This is multidisciplinary research bringing together different fields: design, psychology, even social and behavioral science. It's cutting-edge research. The intent is to rigorously assess what really makes for good human-centric design, not just by instinct or experience, but through rigorous scientific methods. So we'll be putting out grant calls for this research soon. These are open calls. Anyone can submit and get funding for research in this area. And I hope architectural firms can respond to this call by submitting proposals for research funding, either as individual firms or in consortiums amongst yourselves, or even in collaboration with leading academic and research institutions, both locally and around the world. I know that investing in research costs money, and in times of difficulty or in times of stress, Some people say, well, I'm trying to deal with the day-to-day. I don't even have time to think about longer term. But actually, in these times, it's all the more important to invest in capability building. The investments in new capabilities may not yield immediate results, but over time, our firms will be more competitive, not just in Singapore, but especially also when you're bidding for overseas projects. And that too, I know it's not easy. It's never easy for our firms, especially smaller ones, to venture overseas. Government agencies like Enterprise Singapore and BCA will do their best to facilitate this process and to highlight opportunities in overseas markets. As a government, we will continue to promote our local architects and designers abroad, and we do so through various platforms. Every alternate year, we have the Singapore Pavilion at the Venice Biennale International Architecture Exhibition. So that is a platform to showcase our top architects. URA also publishes books on Singapore architecture and architects. The most recent one is a book called Contemporaneous Architecture Singapore. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's a very good book showcasing 70 projects by our architects. Recently, we held the World City Summit Mayors Forum, all the way in Medellin, Colombia. More than 30 hours of travel. We lugged suitcases of these books, and whenever I met a mayor or city leader, I personally gave them a copy of the book. So we are helping you. I'm telling you this story to let you know that all of us are helping you to beat the drum for Singapore architects, to be your cheerleaders and to promote you internationally. If you get a call from a mayor asking to do a project, it's okay. I'm not asking for any referral fees. It's free service. And we will continue to do everything we can to promote your work and Singapore architects so that you can do well. So in conclusion, the government values the contributions of our architects. We are doing all this because we value your contributions. The beautiful city we have today is the result of your work. It is the result of a core of Singapore architects who have produced over the decades a remarkable portfolio of innovative designs. Many of them are here, our pioneers, our pioneer generation, our Merdeka generation. They have all helped to shape our beautiful city, and tonight's winners of the SIA Architecture Design Awards add to this growing portfolio, and I extend my congratulations to all of them. But really, to all of you, we owe a big debt of gratitude, so thank you to all of your contributions. We must build on these strong foundations. The government is committed to strengthening this partnership with our architectural community so that we can do more together. And there is indeed a lot to do, as I've described. We have many plans for the coming years and decades, but the plans are only as good as their implementation, and the potential for us to leave behind a positive impact on our society, on future generations, is tremendous. So let's work together in this next phase of urban development and make Singapore a better city and a more enduring home for all of us. On that note, thank you very much. Please enjoy your dinner.